You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Haunted Histories with your host Penny G. Morgan, right here on Parasearch Radio.
Good evening, you lovely lot, and welcome to another hour or so of the spooky and the bygone days with yours truly, Penny G. Morgan of Haunted Histories, here, only and exclusively on Parasearch Radio. Last week we visited Bodmin Jail in Cornwall with Sally and Alex of Silent Voices Ghost Hunts. If the show made you think, hell yes, I have to visit there, don't delay, as the owners of the site have applied for permission to turn parts of the old prison into a hotel, of all things. For risk of offending anyone who thinks this is a good idea, I can honestly say I am disappointed at the destruction of so much of our historical heritage to make it more profitable, or perhaps more palatable to the perception of the public. I'm not going to get on my high horse about this, as people might start to realise I do actually have a serious side, and who wants that? But I do feel we take our amazing buildings and things for granted in this country. And I wish we could hold on to more of them for future generations, to give them a chance to get into history the same way that a lot of us enjoy visiting these places rather than just having to read it out of a book. However, saying that, if it does become a hotel, who's likely to want to go and stay there? Apart from paranormal enthusiasts, prison fanatics, and possibly history buffs. Can't really see people visiting for their honeymoon or a romantic weekend away. Well, I would, but, you know, that's because I kind of fit into all three of those categories. Anyway, excuse me. This week, however, we're only travelling back to an event that happened 50 years or so ago. So actually in the lifetime of many people. History doesn't actually have to be eons ago, doesn't have to be hundreds and hundreds of years ago. History is happening every single day. It just depends whether you want to learn about it. But this event sadly resulted in some of the most famous murders, probably of the last 100 years, the Manson Family killings. I'm going to be talking to a couple of friends of mine from America who have had the opportunity to investigate the Oman house, which seems to have the most links with the former Polanski property of 10050 Cello, I think that's how you pronounce it, Drive, where probably their most well-known massacre took place. Whilst the Polanski mansion no longer exists and was pulled down in 1994, David Oman's father built his property on land acquired just 150 feet away 5 years later. When we speak with Tammy and Emily shortly, we can discuss the reasons why a house which has actually been coined the Mount Everest of haunted houses and Disneyland for the dead is not actually the place where the murders occurred. So why does it have so much activity recorded? There are reports that the site is also the place of a former Native American burial ground, so that could explain some of the accounts. But most things described regarding the hauntings there have been attributed to the late Mrs. Polanski and her house guests. But shall we look at what actually happened back there in 1969? Shall we? Yes? You listening? Now, before I start, I can't go in the next 20 minutes into the whole psyche of Charles Manson, how he controlled people and everything else, so I'm going to touch on things. But it's up to you if you want to read further. And if you do, please tell me any interesting tidbits that you find out. But Charles Manson, I suppose you could say, the self-styled prophet and cult leader of the Manson family, was born to an unmarried 16-year-old Kathleen Maddox in 1934. It's hard to actually ascertain as to whether his unconventional early years were actually the reason for Manson's, I suppose you could say, later developments, as much of what he says he experienced as a child and an adolescent has been shown to be fabrication. His stories change in interviews on a regular basis. One story he told an interviewer was that his mother was a heavy drinker and sold him once for a pitcher of beer to a childless waitress. Apparently he was rescued back by his uncle a few days later. Another story is that he was sent to a boys' school by the courts, and I don't mean, your pot eaten or something like that. I mean a boys' school. And he ran away after 10 months back to his mother, who supposedly rejected him. If these stories are true, you can perhaps begin to understand why he created this cult family around himself. Either that, he was born both a psychopath and a sociopath, and events just exacerbated those inherent tendencies. By the time that the family was created in the late 60s, Manson had spent more than half his adult life incarcerated. It was after his last prison stint, in 1967, that he started to tell his followers that they were the reincarnation of the original Christians, and that the establishment was playing the part of the Romans. He inferred to these people that he was in fact Jesus Christ, and had visions of having been crucified. What I find interesting to note, though, when you start looking at the accounts, is that he definitely had a particular type of female follower he encouraged. Young, they were all under 23, 24, impressionable, and from divorced middle-class families. It probably also helped that they were all taking hallucinogens of some description, and consequently believed pretty much everything their prophet had told them. He was also able to isolate his followers by taking them to a broken down and desolate ranch in California, the Spahn Ranch. The Spahn Ranch was actually a former Western setting, and he encouraged the women to sleep with the 80-year-old nearly blind owner, George, and they were also expected to act as his sight guides and just help him out on the property. What was perhaps fundamental in the chaos that Manson was later to cause was his determination in his helter-skelter theory and his infatuation with the Beatles' White Album. He believed that the White Album was made for them, made for the family, and was an indication of all the social turmoil that was going to happen. That racial tension, which was his helter-skelter theory, between blacks and whites was growing, and that the blacks would soon rise up in rebellion in America's cities. In the research that I'd been doing for this show, I can't find really a single valid reason why Manson was able to control people the way he did, aside from the use of drugs, but also why he felt the need to control. He is known, post the period when the most murders were committed, July to August 1969, as courting publicity and interviews in prison. And in fact, his ability to be able to give interviews has been curtailed by the American prison system due to the fact that, well, A, his stories were never the same, B, he would do a ridiculous dance to interviewers and interviewers alone, and they could see that he enjoyed it. He enjoyed giving the interviews. One of the most interesting things in all of this, though, is even though Manson ended up being imprisoned for murder, he actually never murdered anyone, not that we know of anyway. There are supposed to be at least another 25 murders attributed to the Manson family that they were never tried for, and he could have partook in one of them, but he actually puppeteered his followers to do the murders for him. Reading the most famous book about the Manson murders, Helter Skelter, by the defense attorney Vincent Bugliosi, you discover that some of the blind alleys that the killings sent the Los Angeles Police Department down when they first happened. It all started with the death of Gary Hinman in July of 1969 by Manson family member Bobby Beausoleil. although he was accompanied by Susan Atkins and Mary Brunner, and it was over a bad drug deal, and Hinman refused to refund the cash to the Manson family. He apparently sold them drugs which they then sold on to a biker gang, and the biker gang found out that these drugs weren't what they were supposed to be. And Manson wanted the money back from Hinman, and Hinman refused to give it back to them. After he was murdered, the words "political piggy" were scrawled on the wall in blood to try and make the police believe that the murder had been carried out by a group of radicals. His whole helter-skelter theory. The pig thing was going to be a recurrent theme through the following murders, even though the police didn't put two and two together for quite a while. Shortly after the Hinman murder was the terrible 10050 Cielo Drive. The discovery of an 8-month pregnant Sharon Tate, the wife of director Roman Polanski, who, let's be honest here, Polanski is not a name you associate with tragedy, more of disgust, as he was arrested and charged 8 years after losing his wife and unborn child with the rape of a 13-year-old girl, a charge he kind of escaped by running away to Europe. They also discovered Jay Sebring, the hairdresser, the well-known hairdresser who was hairdresser to the stars, including people like Steve McQueen and George Peppard, Abigail Folger, who was due to inherit the Folger coffee fortune, Wojciech Frykowski, who was a childhood friend of Polanski's, and an unfortunate accidental visitor to the property, Stephen Parent. He had been trying to sell the, I suppose, caretaker who wasn't murdered, who lived in the pool house, a radio clock radio. They were all murdered in the most brutal and frenzied way possible, with multiple stab wounds, ropes strung around their necks, and shot. Finding that would have probably sent waves of horror and revulsion through the hardest of murder detectives, let alone the junior LAPD officers who were first called to the scene. On the night of the 8th of August 1969, Tex Watson took Susan Atkins, Linda Kasabian and Patricia Krenwinkel to Cielo Drive. It's believed it's because Manson had visited there earlier looking for Terry Melcher, the son of Doris Day, in fact, who was a record producer who, aspiring musician Manson, had tried to enter into a recording contract recently with, and felt that Melcher had snubbed him. Many officials believe Manson ordered the hit, believing the house to still be lived in by Melcher, not realising that Melcher had actually passed the lease on to the Polanskis. The group proceeded to cut the phone lines, approaching the house on foot. The headlights of a truck driven by 18-year-old Stephen Parent approached them, and Watson shot him around 4 times. Next they went across the front lawn, cutting the screen on a window to get into the house. The first resident to see them was Folger's boyfriend, Frykowski, who, when questioning who Watson was greeted with, "I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business." The 3 other occupants, Tate, Folger and Sebring, were forced into the living room, with Tate and Sebring being tied together by their necks, and the ropes slung over the beams that were in the mansion ceiling. Sebring tried to defend Tate and stop the heavy treatment of the 8-month pregnant woman, and that caused Watson to shoot him. Then Watson stabbed him multiple times. Kasabian, yes, the band is named after her, tried to halt the massacre, but inside the house Folger had escaped and was followed out by Krenwinkel, who stabbed her, tackled her to the ground, and allowed Watson to finish her off. She was stabbed around 28 times by all accounts. Krenwinkel, one of the murderers, was actually bullied as a young woman and a child, so by the time she met Manson and he called her beautiful, she was basically ready to do whatever he wanted. Frykowski by this time had escaped the towel that they had used to bind his wrists and was struggling across the front lawn. Watson, Tex Watson, caught up with him and murdered him in a mad slew of stabbings. Over 50 in total. Sharon Tate, probably the terrified Sharon Tate, had been left in the house at this point and was begging for the life of her unborn child. It's not known exactly who actually killed the heavily pregnant Tate, but it's believed to have been either Susan Atkins, Tex Watson, or both of them. The following night, 6 of the family members, the 4 from the Polanski murders and 2 others, Leslie Van Houten and Steve Clem Grogan, rode out to commit further murders. Manson accompanied them this time, supposedly disappointed at the panic of the victims on the previous night and wanting to show his followers how to do it properly. The unfortunate victims this time were Leno and Rosemary LaBianca of 3301 Waverley Drive. The couple were discovered with their heads covered with pillowcases and lamp cords in place around their throats, and then violently stabbed. By the time the police finally caught up with the murderers, having blamed in the Tate murders, they blamed the caretaker, the young caretaker who lived in the pool house originally, and they didn't put 2 and 2 together that the LaBianca murders were the same culprits as the Polanski ones. But when they did, and the killers were actually apprehended, they were all given death sentences. However, these were commuted to life sentences after the death sentence was abolished in California shortly afterwards. Where are they all now? Well, Manson is still in prison and has been turned down, thankfully, for parole on multiple occasions. Anyone who follows the true crime scene will know that some time ago he carved a cross into his forehead, although he then turned that into a swastika. Tex Montgomery, or Tex Watson, whatever you want to call him, he's still in prison and unlikely to ever leave. Krenwinkel, still in prison. Susan Atkins, well, she kind of got a reprieve in a way. She died of brain cancer in 2009, and she was insanely allowed to get married on 2 separate occasions while she was in prison, and she received conjugal visits. I'm not sure if I think that's right or not, but that's for you to decide. Kasabian, well, she didn't actually commit any of the murders, and she was offered immunity from prosecution for turning state's evidence. Originally, they tried to get Susan Atkins to turn state's evidence, but she wouldn't betray Manson. But Kasabian, on the other hand, was disgusted by what had happened. She was even accused by female members of the family as actually having been the mastermind of the murders. But this was later repudiated by various members who had been there, including Tex, who said it was an absolutely ridiculous theory, and nobody who knew them would ever have believed it anyway. The last one was Leslie Van Houten. She didn't participate in the Cielo Drive killings, but supposedly was upset at the time by not being invited to that particular bloodbath, so she got involved in the LaBianca slayings the following day. She was recommended for parole, believe it or not, in September of this year. However, they are still waiting on the decision of both the State Parole Board and Governor Jerry Brown, who has vetoed the decision before. We shall see. Do I think any of them should ever be released? Don't know. Manson certainly not. Based on the absolutely horrific way that Tate and her friends were slain. Now, it's interesting to note that the coroner who did the autopsy on Sharon Tate said that her baby would have probably survived if a caesarean section had been done on them at least less than 20 minutes after she'd been murdered. But by the time they got to her, there was no way the baby could be rescued. I believe it was a little boy. But it's no surprise, really, that they still hang around the area. Manson, on the other hand, I think is dangerous. I think he's incredibly dangerous. He managed to use his followers as a murder weapon. And that, to me, creates a far higher sense of risk than an individual who perpetuates their own killing. I'd be interested to know what you think. But on that note, on that gory, gruesome note, shall we take a quick 30-second break? And when we come back, we can talk with Emily and Tammy. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
And we're back. I'm now joined from across the pond two very lovely ladies. We've got Tammy and Emily, who've both had a lot of experience in paranormal investigating and have also investigated the Oman house, which is built near to where the house where the Manson family killed Sharon Tate and her friends back in 1969. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. I know it's about 11 o'clock in the morning where you are, so it's not too early.
Thanks for having us on. We're excited to be here.
Oh, I'm excited to be talking to you both, definitely. Seeing some of the stuff that you put on Facebook, I'm assuming this is going to be quite an amusing show, some of the things we're going to be coming out with.
Hopefully it'll be entertaining.
Always entertaining.
Oh, it will be. It will be. It will be. That's not something that I ever get criticised of not being when I start going, taking the mickey out of people. Anyway, when I have new guests on one of my shows, one of the things I like to do is be a little bit nosy to start off with and find a bit about them. So I don't mind which of you goes first, but how did you get into the paranormal and investigating it?
I'll go ahead and go first. My name is Emily, and I am from the paranormal team Three Girls in the Dark in St. Louis, Missouri. I am co-founder along with Gina Passante, and her and I, we actually met in college, and we kind of reconnected through Facebook a few years after graduating. And one day she had posted, "Who wants to go paranormal investigating with me?" And I was like, "Bitch, are you serious? Let's go right now. I'm ready." So, and we call each other the mom and dad of the team because we kind of like, I know obviously, we're the co-founders, so we're like mom and dad in that aspect, but also like in a personal aspect, we're kind of like mom and dad. Like I make sure that we have all the snacks for the road. I make sure that we have the maps ready to get where we're going. We have gas. Everybody's got their seatbelts on. I play like the real mom of the team. And Gina plays dad. And she's basically like, she sits in her recliner and is like drinking her beer. And then when I have had enough of the kids, I'm like, "Hey, Dad, get up off the chair and, crack your whip." And so she's got to put her beer down. She's got to get up and be like, "All right, everybody's got to listen to Mom," kind of thing. So it's like, it's a really fun situation in our team. But like Gina, the way we like to put it, because we're like para-married. So she's the dad and I'm the mom. And she asked me to go on an invitation. And so we always say she said yes. So I accepted the para ring and I got married to Gina, paranormal married. So that's our whole little mom and dad shtick thing there. But before meeting Gina in college and all that, I kind of did like, don't tell anyone this, but I did like urbexing. And I don't know if you guys...
Yes, we know what urbexing is, yes.
Yes, okay. So, like, I'm super obsessed with, like, historic, run-down, dilapidated buildings.
Oh, I hear you. Yep.
I'm, like, psycho-obsessed with these things. So, like, if I saw something on the side of the road and I had to be somewhere, it didn't matter where I had to be. I stopped and I went inside this building. It didn't matter what day it was, where I was going. Nothing mattered. I had to stop and look at this building. I had to go inside. So... for me, it started with that. And then, obviously the TV shows and all that's, showing people like investigating and using their EVP recorders. I was like, well, I can do something like that. I think I can do that. So I started, after I was like going into these abandoned homes, I started bringing things with me. I started bringing cameras and, EVP recorders. And I think the very first time I ever brought a camera and an EVP recorder, I got one of the best EVPs I've ever gotten in my life. So I started out and I got like a class A EVP on my very first investigation. And it was like that, it was just like a little taste of something. And I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. Like if I can get this every time I go, that would be amazing. So it was almost like a drug, you know what I mean? Like I had my first taste of like a really good drug and I was like, I want more. So, not that I'm into drugs. We're going to scratch that. Not into drugs, but...
I get the analogy. It's fine. I understand the analogy, yeah.
I got to make sure people know that. But yeah, no, I had this really amazing Class A EVP, and it was in this abandoned house by my sister's house, probably like a good almost 10 years ago. And there was only 3 of us in the house. It was like 3:00 in the morning, and this house was out in the middle of a field. And we had been up and down the entire house. So we knew there was no one there. There were no animals there. It was dead winter. And we got a voice from a little girl, and it's clear as day. It's a little girl saying, "Thank you." And
wow.
we were flabbergasted by this. Like I said, this was the very first time I had ever brought an EVP recorder into a building to try to document the paranormal. And I got a Class A EVP. So like I said, it just made me want to come back for more and keep trying and keep researching and keep documenting and all that. And I would say that was a good 7 to 10 years ago ish. I'd have to go back and look at the EVP when that was taken. But yeah, I mean, I've been I was a normal child growing up, I would say. I had friends, I played sports. I had a normal upbringing, but I also had this little weirdo inside of me. I had this little weird closet weirdo.
Release the inner weirdo.
Yes, yeah. So when I was little, I remember there was this creek behind my house, and I used to go to the creek searching for dead bodies when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. That. I was that little weirdo. I looked normal on the outside, but I was like, let's go find a dead body in the creek. 7 years old. So, growing up in the Midwest, especially, I had to hide that inner weirdo. And I finally was able to release it. Once I was in college and I met Gina and we started doing all this, I was like, yeah, I can be a weirdo now. Look at me. I'm weird. So I was able to let my inner weirdo shine. And now I've just, been myself ever since then, and it feels kind of nice. So
cool.
Yeah.
And what about yourself, Tammy? How did you get into it?
Okay. So first of all, I am also I'm a founder of Lost Souls Investigations. We've been a team since 2012, but I've been investigating for over 16 years. For me, I saw my first spirit when I was 5. We were at a place called Mika State Mansion, and they used to have what would you call it? A flea market type thing on the grounds of this old house. And I was there with my parents, and I look up in the bedroom window, and there's a little girl looking down at me. She had on a white lace dress, and she had black braids, and I just looked up at her, and I went to yank on my mom's arm, and I'm like, look, and we looked up, and she was gone. And it was pretty cool because about, 25 years later, I got to actually investigate that place, and I did find out that window, that bedroom, was the little girl's bedroom. So it was kind of validation of what I saw when I was 5. But what kind of started me in the field was when I was 12, we went to go look at a house to move into, and I told my parents I don't want to live here because as soon as I walked into that home, I felt an energy in there. And it just wasn't good. And I told them, and they're like, you're crazy. They're not going to listen to a 12-year-old girl saying, let's not move into this house. And within a week of living there, things started happening. We're sitting there having dinner in my bedroom. My stereo goes on by itself. And back then we had the 6-disc CD players or whatever, and it would change the CD to the next CD to the next CD. And then I went and turned it off and sat back down, and then the TV in the living room goes on by itself. So by that point, everybody believed what I said when we first moved in. And I lived in fear for quite some time. And I'd say by the time I was about 16, I was just more intrigued, and I wanted to kind of get rid of the fear. So I started doing more research on the paranormal and ghosts, and I would leave a recorder going when we all went to school and work, and not even really knowing what I was looking for, of course, at that time. But by the time I was 20, I started investigating with different teams, and it became a passion and a way of life for me because I am sensitive to spirits. I feel them around me, and it's just something that it's a lifestyle for me. It's not something that I'm just choosing to do as a hobby. And I really got into it to help people in their homes. We really focus on residential cases because I know the fear that I lived in when I was a child, and my teammate Andrew, he had the same thing when he was young, and we want to help people in this field in general, and that's basically what got me into it. We also do historical locations as well to learn, and of course to love the history of places. So that's basically why I got into it.
Wow. Okay. So how do you two know each other? Have you sort of met on different paranormal events and things like that, or is it good old Facebook?
Oh, actually, I don't even remember. I think Tammy, I don't remember if you had friend requested me or it was the other way around. I think that you had requested me last year, maybe, I think it was. Or maybe even the year before that. I mean, I don't even remember when I become friends with anybody like on Facebook. I get all these friend requests and I just like either ignore them or I accept and I don't even like go back and look. But like Tammy, I think the very first interaction I do remember with Tammy, like she had gone live and I was like bored at home in the middle of the night and I saw that she was live at like a graveyard or something like that. So I popped on and I was like, ooh, you know, like this looks like fun. Wish I could be like investigating right now. And I was just kind of like interacting with her and her team. And and we just kind of like became friends from there on social media. And then I had invited her and her team to our Halloween party. I think it was last year. And her and Matthew flew out and came to our party. And then we just like hit it off. I mean, Tammy's a great girl and her and I get along really, really well. So it was like, it was really, really fun to like party with her and everything. And then after I moved out here, I've seen her at least 3 times, I think it was. I think, what are you, like 5 hours from me right now?
It's about a 5-hour drive.
You're in North California, aren't you?
Yeah.
Tammy? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so Tammy has come out to see me and help me with a few things that I'm involved in, a few projects that I'm doing. And she's come out and helped me out a lot, you know, with those. So yeah, I mean, we've become really close friends, like since she came out to our Halloween party. And, you know, we've been trying to do a lot together while I'm out here. So it's been a lot of fun.
Great.
Definitely.
Great. Well, it's always good. I do think, I mean, there are some people in the paranormal world who do like to keep themselves to themselves. They don't want to share. They don't want to become friends with other paranormal people because they don't want them to question things and everything else. Yeah. But I find an awful lot more. It is kind of a connection that whether you're, in my case, in the UK, whether you're in the US, we've got people who listen here from Spain on our show.
Yeah,
it's awesome. A family. It is a family at the end of the day because we all want to talk about our experiences. We all want to talk about the methods we use. We all want to sort of discuss things. I mean,
sharing your experiences and your, you know, documentation and your findings helps us all in finding answers and improving the research of the paranormal. So I don't know why anyone wouldn't want to do that. Like it's selfish to not want to share what you have experienced or what you have, you know, found. It's selfish.
Yeah.
And I feel like too with Emily and I, like when we realized how much stuff we had in common outside of the paranormal. So, you know, you make these connections with the people. And you make friends all over the place, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, no, I love the sort of. Well, it does make it a smaller world, and it's you know as much as I'd love to go out to America and do a road trip around the States, all the different places I'd like to investigate from a history perspective, it may never happen. So having people I can talk to who've done them, kind of I can find out about them as well, and you know it's when I've had one of our colleagues, I think you know him actually, Emily, Jay Lynch.
Yes, Jay Lynch. Yes, I do know Jay.
Jay and Teresa, they do a show on our channel, and you know, he quite frequently will say to me, "Oh, have you been to such a?" Yeah, I've been to such. I haven't investigated it, but I've been there as a visitor, and it's kind of that being, you know, there are experiences we may never all get to experience, but having people you can talk to about them.
Right.
It's interesting. It is interesting.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'd never be able to probably come across the pond and invest. Like, you guys have, like, castles and shit. Like, we don't have that shit out here.
Quite a few, yeah.
Would love to investigate a castle. Like, that's like one of my things. Like,
I actually got kind of lucky. I went to Prague and I did catacombs.
Prague. When you mentioned that in your message the other night, Tammy, I was actually squealing because Prague is actually one of my favourite cities. I've got 3 favourite cities in the world at the moment. One is in the UK. It's called York. It's sort of the north of the UK. Another one is San Francisco. And, and the other one is Prague. They're my favourite cities.
Yeah, Prague is amazing. I've been there 3 times, and it just, as soon as you just step foot there, you just feel the energy, and it's just amazing.
Definitely.
It's absolutely amazing.
And then when you read about the history of the place and what it's gone through, and it's, you know, and the weirdest thing about Prague I don't know if you've ever seen photos of it, Emily, but it's got two sections to it. It's got Old Town and New Town. And I swear the Old Town is like something out of a Grimm's fairy tale. That's what it looks like. And you literally go down these alleyways and you go into the New Town, which is the communist bit, and they are just so different. It's like stepping into another world. And
that's crazy.
It's it's a very beautiful and interesting place all at the same time, but there are some parts of it that have got quite a sort of
dark history.
Yeah. I was going to say a dark energy around it, but like a dark sort of feeling. You do feel quite sort of, not suffocated, that's the wrong word, but you can't smile. You almost feel like you can't smile and have fun, and whereas other parts of it you do want to almost skip down the street. It's
right.
Yeah. It's an interesting place. Very interesting place. But yes, we have quite a few castles here in the UK. Both sort of run down ones, ruins, and also but all over the UK we have them. You know, it's one of those things. We're very lucky with the buildings we have here. But interestingly enough, and I was talking to someone about this the other day, don't ever seem to get spirits that are more than 200, 250 years old. Very rarely, very rarely get ones. I mean, we've got a lot of Roman history in the UK, and it's very rare to get Roman-related hauntings reported.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
because it dates back so much further than what we have here in the States. I mean, California, I mean, our oldest buildings are probably like the 1800s, but you would think you would get something much different there.
Yeah. No, I was talking to someone about this the other day who investigates a place called Warwick Castle quite a lot. And Warwick Castle's history, I did a show on it a few months ago, and it's all to do. You may not have heard of it. It's to do with a war in England in, when was it? It was it's like 600-700 years ago, called the War of the Roses. And this castle played quite a fundamental part in this, by someone who lived there who caused one family to become the royal family, then decided to change his mind and managed to get he's called the Kingmaker. And his sort of, the hauntings normally are reported, and the experiences that people have are normally more recently related, like in the last 200 years. They very rarely get anything that's all the way back.
I think that we have a similar situation here in the States, though, because, like, you know, a lot of people will they claim that they see people in period clothing, but why do we not see Native Americans? You know what I mean? Like, people do experience like interactions with Native American gods and things like that, but not necessarily like a human that walked the earth and is haunting a certain area. Like, we don't hear that very often. But a lot of the times it's like a residual type of haunting thing. Like, I went to a jail in Indiana that had very high Native American energy, and we heard drums in the basement of this jail, like far below ground level, and there was no noise anywhere, and we heard drums down there. So it's like that was possibly, you know, something that was residual and not something that was like interacting with us. But like, there's not a whole lot of claims, at least what I have heard, of things dating like further back than like the 1700s. Like, it's just weird.
Well, when you think about it, I mean, didn't people land in America 1600s or something, wasn't it? In like Jacksonville and all around that part of Virginia and all around there, where the Mayflower and all those things.
Yeah, and that's kind of a controversial thing here.
Oh, is it?
It's kind of I don't really like to get into that because it gets really political, but
okay.
I mean, like, you know, the genocide and all that, because I am Native American. Like, I am a small percentage Native American, and basically they murdered and raped basically all of our people, and it just kind of, you know, like I said, I don't like to get into it because it's like you can go off on a tangent and completely opposite direction of where we want to go. But like, I don't know, it's just like there's not a lot of like claims that have to do with Native American spirits. It's mainly like, you know, 1700s or recent too. And a lot of people, I have heard some people's claims of like there's only a certain period of like time where people haunt, and then they either move on or like something happens to their energy. And I wonder if that has anything to do with, why we don't, see or hear spirits that are further back than that. I don't know. It's just, it's all theory.
Exactly, it's all theory, and it's. I mean, I know we do have in the UK we have a wall that's called Hadrian's Wall, which was meant to separate Scotland from the England when the Romans were there, because the Scots were the Picts and they were fighting them, and there is reportedly people have said they have seen Roman soldiers walking along the wall, but
wow.
It's very few and far between. Whereas other things, like if you go into, I mean, I investigated an old nuclear bunker a few months ago. The irony is it's called the secret nuclear bunker, and there's signposts up everywhere to tell you where it is. But it was one that was built in the early 1950s when the Cold War started, following World War II. And yeah, I had a hell of a lot of experiences I got chatted up by a 22-year-old soldier. It was fab.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it was fun. It was interesting. That was the first. He kept turning my spirit box on. That was in my. I must admit, I copied the Three Girls in the Dark idea of those hip bags, like because I thought that was such a good idea rather than trying to sling a bag over your shoulder. And I had my spirit box in there, and you know how hard those things are to turn on. They don't just flick on.
Yep.
It turned it on twice until I came onto the spirit board to talk to it.
That's so cool. So, I mean, like, in such high energy there, like, is it, it was fairly recent, I mean, it was only shut in 91. This place was only decommissioned in 1991.
Wow.
Now, our theory is on it because the people who went down there, obviously we never had a nuclear war, thank God. Who knows what might happen. But we won't talk about politics either.
No.
We'll steer clear of that one. But when they were down there doing in service, they would be locked in for 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks at a time to check the place would operate. And the only thing we could think of is the concentration of energy when you were down there as a worker has kind of stayed. And that's why it was just a constant feeling of people being around you and buzzing around you, and it was very strange. But my spirit box got turned on twice in my sort of hip bag thing, tactical bag, and until I came, and then one of them said, I think you need to come and talk to him on the board, and as soon as I did, it stopped turning itself on. So, but that's quite recent. That he told us he was there in 1952. That's what we ended up getting out of him. And you were saying about it being addictive and almost being, I mean, I've never done drugs, but I can assume it's that wanting to, I want to go back and further my conversation with him. I know I can't guarantee that I can.
It is like a drug. It's like a drug addiction. I hate to compare it to that, but it's like once you get a little taste of it and you actually receive what you're looking for, then you're like, oh my God, I want more. I want to go back. I want to go back in time. So it's like, and I have done drugs. I'm not gonna lie, I have done drugs, so I know what it feels like. So I know it is definitely a lot like that. It's the adrenaline rush. It's like you're feeding something, in your body. You're feeding something with the paranormal, but it's also a lot safer than drugs. So I would say go the paranormal route if you have an addictive personality.
I think it's a shame though, because it's
paranormal,
Sorry, what's that?
The best things that happen we don't even get on record or on video.
Oh, tell me about it. Tell me about it. I did tell Emily one. I did an old RAF air traffic control tower that was when the US Air Force were here during World War II. And me being the history buff, I was explaining to my friend, we were looking at the map of where all the stations were that was it was an original map, and she was asking me why they were all in this part of the UK called East Anglia. And I was explaining to her, but it was because of the bombing runs that they did where they were going to. It was easy for them to go straight out over the North Sea, etc., etc. And behind us we had a voice go, yep. And we both heard it because we looked at each other, and she went, did you no recorders going, because we still had the lights on. We were just looking around the building at this point, getting our sort of bearings and what we were going to do and when. I went racing off to check there was no one else in the building, anyone else from the team we were in. They were all over still in the rec room, which was across a field. There was no one there. And as I'm racing around trying to find, we could hear footsteps in the control room upstairs. So she goes flying up there. There's no one there. And it's just like, it's those times when you just wish you'd had the recorders going.
That a lot of times that's when the craziest shit happens too. It's like they know. They know that you're not recording and that you're not ready for them, but they want to give you a little taste. Like, okay, here we're gonna do this, but not while you're recording. How about fucking no?
Yeah, I've had clocks fly off the wall at my house 3 times, 3 separate occasions, and never once was able to get it on video.
You need to have words with them. If they're going to try and break stuff in your house, Tammy, you need to at least get it on video, get something out of it. I mean,
thank you.
Get one of those security cameras put up in your room, and of course they'll stop flying off the wall as soon as you do that too.
Yeah.
Exactly. But thank God I had witnesses that saw it, so I'm happy about that.
That's
well, I tell you what, if I hadn't had my friend with me and she heard this, at the same time as me, I'd have thought I was imagining it. But
that's exactly how my brain works. I'm like, like I process it, like I hear it and then I process it and then I think and I'm like, wait a minute, is it my ears playing tricks on me because there's no, there's like a white noise or something, or is it my eyes playing tricks on me because it's dark? Like I instantly start to question my sanity.
Yeah.
If I'm the only person there experiencing something. So, but I'm also like the debunker of the team. Like I'm constantly trying to make sure that whatever we're experiencing, if we are experiencing something, is paranormal. And that's kind of like, it's a positive and a negative in a way, because, like I don't want to just like freak out and instantly think something is paranormal. That's just not how my brain works. Yeah. But also I've been learning to kind of like delay my investigative side of me and let the experience happen. Yeah. And then go back and try to debunk everything. Like back when I first started, I was instantly trying to debunk things. Instead of letting the experience happen and letting myself absorb it, I would instantly look for the cause. Instantly look for something, like a rational explanation. And now, like, the longer I've been investigating, the more I've figured out how to, like, delay that and, like, absorb what's happening and process it a little bit before I jump on the debunk wagon.
Yeah.
So,
I'm the same. I'm what I'd call a skeptical believer. I want to check everything first. And I've had when I've been looking at people's photos, and they'll say, they'll say there's a cold spot here. I'll go, okay, then measure the temperature. Yep, it is definitely colder there. Let's see if there's a vent. Let's see if
is there a glass somewhere? Is there a window open?
Is there a brick missing from that wall that we can't see because it's dark? But if I put the light on it, you'll see it. And if you find there is, they're like, well, I thought you believed in it. I said, I do. Yeah,
that doesn't mean we're gonna like just accept anything and everything that you think. Like the people that are like super, super, super wanting something to happen are the ones that just ignore the signs of it being something rational. So it's like, I don't know, you just have to be nice, you know what I mean? Like, but I'm also, like I said, I'm the asshole of the team, and everybody gets mad at me because when I debunk something that they like knew 1,000% was paranormal, and then I prove to them that it was not, they get pissed off. So it's like, I've become the asshole of the team, but I'm okay with that because I'd rather be honest and truthful to myself than just accept that something is paranormal because someone says that it is. Like,
would you both agree though? Someone has to be the arsehole in a team.
Yeah, there has definitely an asshole in every team, and I've taken that spot, and I'm okay with it. It's fine.
But I think that also, because I have the asshole, I'm not the asshole of the team, but I do have one, and it sometimes it gets to the point where it gets extremely argumentative, and if you want to debunk something, that's fine, but you have to also listen to other people and what they think, and you have to have a skeptic of the team for sure.
Yeah. I think that's what separates me because, like, yes, I am the asshole, and yes, I will argue until I prove that I'm right if I know that I'm right. But if there's a tiny little glimmer that I'm not sure about something, then I will accept that it's possibly paranormal. But like, there was a situation 2 years ago, I think it was, when someone on the team had laughed, and everyone thought it was like something paranormal, and I kept saying, no, I'm pretty sure it was so-and-so laughing. Like, I'm like 99.99% sure that it was so-and-so laughing. And everybody was like, you're just being skeptical, you're just doing this. No, it was paranormal. And they like fought me. And since I had that tiny little glimmer that I wasn't sure and I wasn't able to prove that it wasn't that person, I allowed it to, be posted as paranormal. But then going like 2 years later, we ended up finding the same laugh from the same person in a different investigation. And we were like, okay, wow, that is the exact same laugh that everyone thought was paranormal. And I'm like, we have to remove that from everything on our social media. I'm like, I can't have that posted online. So like, people finally accepted that I was right about the situation. And so it's like, I will step back a little bit and allow people to try to convince me. But if I know, like, if I have proof that I am right about something not being paranormal, I'm not going to back down.
Yeah.
Because I can't put something out there that I don't believe.
Yeah.
If I don't believe it, I'm not going to put it out there. And then my quote for my team is, when in doubt, throw it out. Mm-hmm. If you have a doubt about something being paranormal, you have to throw that shit out. So that's, that's where I'm at.
So we're sort of talking about doubt and sort of different things. Before we started recording the show, we were talking about the Oman house, which is obviously built about 150 feet away from where the Tate killings, or the Polanski family killings, or however you want to term it, the Manson family murders, or one of the Manson family murders, was committed. When I was sort of talking to friends of mine about this show, and it's one that quite a lot of people over here in the UK are quite interested to hear about, because it has got a level of notoriety about it. Not just the horrific nature of what they did, but how one person could control a load of young people to basically do one of the worst things. Well, I do think killing a 8-month pregnant woman is possibly one of the worst things you could do. Right. Has anyone got any idea why the Oman house is so active, or expect? Because you got someone like Barry Taff goes there, he won't go back. He termed it the Mount Everest of haunted houses and all that kind of thing. Is it? What was your initial impression when you walked in?
Well, God, I had a really, really, really like low energy feeling when I walked in. But I will, like, I need to set something straight before I continue. I am the person on the team that doesn't really experience things or feel things. I have an intuition, but I also don't like, I'm not very open, I guess you could say. And we do have a psychic medium on our team, Melissa, and then Gina is kind of like, she's sometimes open and she's sometimes not. Okay. So like, and then Ryan, I don't know if I haven't even gone into who my team is, but like Ryan is kind of like me as well. He has like a little bit of an intuition, but he doesn't really get a lot of experiences. He's kind of more closed off like I am. So like going into this house, if I go into a location and I instantly feel something, then there's something there. Because like I said, I don't feel things like ever. And when I walked into that house, but I also believe in like feng shui and paint colors, because I used to like want to do interior design. So I know that like the way, like the route of the house and things like that can also affect the way you feel when you walk into a room. So part of me is like, well, maybe it's just because it's like low ceilings, or like the way he has it decorated, or, like the feng shui of the house, like that could also affect the way you feel when you walk in. But since so many people have said that it's the energy that's in the house, I was a little bit more accepting of possibly that it was something paranormal that I was experiencing. But I can say that when I walked in, I felt like a very, very heavy negative energy when I walked in there, for sure.
Right. What about you, Tony?
Walking into the home, I didn't feel too much. He has a lot of memorabilia, you can say, about the murders, and he's got lots of photos, and so it kind of sets the tone, and I think that can kind of play with your mind at the same time. The only place that I really felt something very negative was when we were down at the basement level. And it was very oppressive down there to me. The upper part of the house, I didn't really feel too much, and I'm usually pretty good at that. But I would say the lower level to me was the worst. I definitely feel like there's something there. I don't think I would call it the most haunted place I've ever been.
No,
but I have been to some extremely active places, and I just didn't get that, at least at that visit when we were there.
Right.
Yeah. And like the weird part is that like her and I were kind of feeling the opposite. Like I said, when I first walked in the door, I did feel a very negative, like heavy energy. But when I was in the basement, I didn't feel that. So it was almost like we were feeling the opposite. And I don't know if I was just picking up on something that she wasn't picking up on, or if she was picking up on something more positive upstairs. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't know exactly what that means, but I know I definitely felt like an icky, weird feeling in the upper level of the home, but I didn't feel that as, so much in the basement area.
Right.
But, like it was a weird experience. I will say that, going into the house, we didn't really know what to expect either. We had done a little bit of research, but sometimes I don't really like to do research before going to a place. I kind of like to go in open-minded because it's kind of like, you don't want anything to influence what you're experiencing. So, going into a place, obviously we already knew about the murders. We knew about Sharon Tate. We knew about all of that, but I didn't really try to research what other people have experienced because I didn't want that to influence my experience. So, we didn't do a whole lot of research prior to going in, and I I'm glad that we didn't. But I did see the episode. I think Ghost Adventures had been there, and I do know that they're not. They kind of aren't into each other very much. I know that David does not really like Zach, and I don't think that Zach really likes David.
Yeah, I kind of got that impression from the body language. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. When we were live, David had a lot to say about Zach, and I was just like, okay, we can keep that down a little bit. We don't need to get into that. This has nothing to do with Ghost Adventures.
Yeah.
But, when we walked in, he was like ready to go. He had all his books out, and he was showing us all the photos and everything. And that was kind of cool, that he's very up to date on what has happened on his property. So that was really cool. But, I think the only thing that we really experienced there that I still, like I said, can't prove was paranormal or not was we did hear like a male voice in the stairwell, I think it was.
Okay. And did you both hear this?
We both heard it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But wasn't it like right before we heard that as when I saw that apparition or shadow?
Yes. Well, no, actually, because, here's the problem. Like, we haven't had time to go back and go over our findings yet. Like, I've been insanely busy out here. I know Tammy's been insanely busy. We haven't actually gone and listened to our EVP recordings or watched the videos yet. But there was a lot of noise going on in the basement that we ended up finding out was his pets.
Cats.
And we did not realize he had so many animals there. Wow. But Tammy saw something in the living room area from like the corner of her eye, or I don't think it was the corner. I think you saw it like straight on. But it was like around the corner and like the sliding glass door. She saw, it looked like someone walked by like and blocked out the light. So, instantly we jump up and we go and investigate, and we're trying to figure out if we were trying to debunk it to see if it was something outside, blah, blah, blah. And then we did hear like a weird scratching noise. So, we flipped out. We're like, what the fuck? So
it sounded like something was crawling up the stairs coming to get us. That's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is amazing. And we're like flipping out. And so me, like I said, the debunker, I'm like, all right, David, you've been recording all of this. He's got audio all over the house. In every single room, he has a camera and audio running. Yeah. I was like, let's go back and watch this. Let's go back and listen. And, I will say that he was a little hesitant to do that. I'm not exactly sure why. I think he just wanted to keep trying to experience what we were experiencing instead of like going back and trying to review it right away. But I'm one of those instant review people. Like, I want to figure out what that was right now. So I made him review it, and we ended up finding out that it was the cat that had made the noise. Yeah. So that, as soon as I figured that out, I was like, okay. I'm like, now I'm going to be a little bit on edge about what we're experiencing that, is not paranormal. So I was a little skeptical. I was a little more skeptical at that point, I guess you could say. And we went back up to the kitchen area. I think it was just Tammy and I for a little bit. And then I think David came up there, and we heard a male voice in the stairwell. Now, of course, I'm like, okay, you've got a computer playing in the basement. Like, what are you playing? What's happening? And so I was instantly skeptical of what I just heard. Instead of trying to experience it as a paranormal experience, I was like, nope, that's not paranormal. I know you have a computer down there. I know you've got audio running. I want to see it. So I was like, kind of, like I said, I was an asshole. I was being an asshole. I was like, nope, I want to go review it right now. Let's go review it right now. And I made him take us down there again and go over everything. And we ended up not finding something that was the culprit. So that possibly could have been paranormal. It was a male voice, and I don't remember exactly what it said. Tammy,
didn't it say like hey or something like that? I think it was like hey.
It was something weird,
something
and it
really quick too.
Yeah.
It wasn't like,
and it was definitely a man's voice, but I think the three of us were in the kitchen at that time. So we know that it wasn't David, and it wasn't either one of us. But the problem is that he had his computer on, and the audio of his computer was on, because when he was down there, you know, I kept having to radio down to him, do you have your audio on your computer? Can you please turn it off? Just because yes, we have fun when we investigate, but I also get serious when I need to get serious. So if you've got audio going, turn that shit off. If you got animals in the house, get them out of the house. You know,
and I think that's just it with his house. Like I think that there's probably something there, but for someone to get a real honest investigation and to really be able to say, yes, this is something, he has to have that house emptied out.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. And unfortunately, he had several
Sorry,
pets
that's my
there.
dog in the background.
The dog's like, no, we can help you. Which obviously animals can help, but when you've got like 6 cats and you've got like 2 dogs or whatever he had going on there, that's just too many.
Yeah.
You can never pinpoint where the noise is coming from, if it's paranormal or not, and it's just like better. It's less contamination. You need to get all of the bodies and all of the animals out of the house to conduct a real serious investigation if you want to try to document something paranormal. So for Tammy and I being there, I think it was just kind of like a fun little experience for us. And I was kind of scoping out the location for my team to come whenever they, come out to California and visit me. They would like to go out there. So it was kind of like a precursor for that, really. But yeah, I mean, if my team were to go in there, we would definitely need for him to, place the animals outside of the building somewhere. And possibly, get him out of the building as well. Like as long as it's just us investigators in there and there's nothing else that can possibly contaminate, I think we would be a little bit, more excited about it. So, David, if you're listening and you want us to come out, see if you can get that to happen.
We'll tag
there. I know it's hard. I know it's hard though to get your animals out of the house. It's hard because there's not like a hotel you can just take your animals to.
Not
so,
really. No.
If that's not possible, we completely understand. But I think the way that my team works, we don't usually go into a situation unless all of the animals are outside of the building.
It's
that's the same here.
Yeah.
I mean, we focus on residential cases, and everybody has to be out of the house.
Yeah. Even the homeowner, unless the homeowner has had a specific experience where we want to try to recreate it, we make the homeowners leave as well. Yeah. It's just better. It's just better. There's less people in the way, and like I said, less contamination. So, and these people that are in their homes, they don't really and I'm not talking about David at this point. He knows what goes on, on investigations. But like a lot of these homeowners that contact us and want us to help, they don't really know exactly how it works. They've only seen what happens on TV, and they don't realize that there's hours and hours and hours of like silence and stuff, and they're like burping and farting and like, you know what I mean, sniffling. And gargling,
whispering,
like, don't go eat Taco Bell before you go on an investigation. Your stomach's gonna like get bubble guts. So it's like that, and sometimes that can sound like a demon saying like "get out." So it's like you gotta get everybody out of the house.
Sorry, that's really making me laugh. That Taco Bell Taco Bell is responsible for demons.
Like quotes, like do not eat Taco Bell before an investigation. That's another like thing we go by. So it's like, you just got to prevent anything that can contaminate the situation. Because when you go over hours and hours of evidence and you find something, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I think I found something. And then you go and you have it debunked. Oh, that was somebody's bubble guts. Like, that's really like heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. All the work you've done, those hours and hours you've sat there quiet and not breathing, and then it gets ruined. Yeah. So like, just to summarize, because I've got about 60 seconds left. Just to summarize.
Oh, no.
I know, we've been talking that long.
I know, I talk too much. I told you.
So just to summarise, there is a feel to the Oman house, what it is and why it's there and everything else. It was hard to ascertain because of the noise contamination from David still being there and his pets. Would that be a...
That
Definitely.
could summarize it up pretty well. Like I said, there was one thing that we experienced that maybe 95% believe that it was paranormal, but like I said, there's no way to prove that it wasn't. So there's a possibility that we did hear a male voice while we were there. So, everybody has had experiences there that's gone there. So who are we to say that, there's nothing there? You can go into a building that has so much activity for everybody, and then when you get there one night, nothing happens. That you can't say that that's not active.
Right. Time on each. Right. So, sorry, this is going to sound a bit disjointed. We just had to reset the recording going. But what I think Emily was just saying is you can't say that people haven't had an experience there.
Right.
There might be something there.
Yeah. I mean, you going there one night of your entire existence cannot prove or disprove that there's activity. There's so many places that people, like the, residential properties where people live every day of their life, they have so many nights to experience something. Yeah. So they can be like, oh my God, something happens like once a week. You come in there one night and nothing happens. You can't walk out of there and say this place isn't active. Yeah. It's just, that's, I guess, the way we look at the Oman house. I definitely felt a weird energy when I walked in, but that doesn't mean that there is something there. But then also the fact that we really didn't have much of an experience doesn't mean that there isn't something there either. So it's it's really hard for me to say that a location is active. Yeah. I'm usually just like, well, we didn't have an experience or we did kind of thing.
Anything you want to add to that, Tammy?
I just think that when you're investigating, you have to investigate something multiple times, even residential places, historical places, because like she said, you can go one night and get something and the next time it can be completely quiet. And then there's some locations that give you something every time you go. It really just depends. The spirits aren't there for a circus act.
Yeah, they're not performing monkeys. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like poking the bear, it's definitely not, they're not going to perform just because you're there. So,
and I would love to go back to the Oman house and actually be able to really investigate and see for myself, because there are tons of claims, but there are also a lot of people in the field who the first time they hear, they want to claim it to be paranormal. So, you have to experience it yourself, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, thank you both so much for coming on the show tonight, or this morning, as it is in your case.
Thanks for having us this morning.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed meeting you both and chatting to you and hearing about your experiences and about the Oman house. Hopefully we'll all get to talk again at some point next year when I'm doing the schedule again next year. But
absolutely.
All I'll say is thanks again, Tammy and Emily. Really appreciate your time. If anyone wants to go and check out their groups, you've got 3 Girls in the Dark on Facebook you can go and have a look at. They are funny, I will say that. They're genuine, but they're also funny. And you've also got Tammy's group, Lost Souls Investigations. They're on Facebook. That's right, isn't it? That's the right name?
Yes.
That's the right name. My mind just went blank then all of a sudden. I'm so sorry. It's been a long day. So you can go and have a look at them on Facebook and see the kind of things they're doing. And do go and give their pages a like. And just join in the whole paranormal community. That's what we're all here for. But all that leaves me to say is thank you ever so much for listening to Haunted Histories. Don't forget, Parasearch Radio has shows on every night of the week. And if you miss it, don't worry. You can go off and listen to it again as the podcast or even on YouTube. We're on there as well. But what that leaves me to say is, again, thank you for listening. Have a good evening. Sleep tight. And don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.